My name is Raymond Cole. I'm 58 years old, and until last Tuesday, I was the senior floor supervisor at Redline Hydraulics in Amarillo, Texas. For the past 24 years, I've made sure every piece of high-pressure equipment that left our floor could be trusted in the field. No leaks, no margin for error. I oversaw installation, trained every lead tech, and built a safety record so clean OSHA used our site as a benchmark. So when Claire from HR asked me to join her in the conference room, and I saw Trent Buckley sitting there, the new operations manager who started 3 months ago and still didn't know how to read a torque calibration chart, I had a bad feeling. He had a spreadsheet open, and he didn't meet my eyes. "Raymond, we appreciate everything you've done," Claire began, that tight corporate smile already in place. "But the company is transitioning into a leaner operational model. Translation, you're too old, too experienced, and too expensive." Trent jumped in. "We're streamlining our supervisory roles and bringing in new management with a focus on digital integration. Your replacement starts Monday. We'd like your help onboarding him." I didn't say a word as Claire slid the folder across the table. Severance papers, a reduced pension package, a 2-week transition period. The company logo at the top felt foreign. They'd changed it last year after the merger with Sunterra Holdings. Never asked us on the floor what we thought. We didn't matter to them anymore. "His name is Corey Sanders," Trent said. "He's coming in from Dallas, MBA from Baylor, Six Sigma certified, and very data-driven." I looked down at the paper, then at the wood grain of the table. I didn't argue, didn't beg, just nodded and said, "Understood." That night, I drove the long way home, out past the old stockyards where my dad used to haul pipe. He worked his hands to the bone and always told me, "Build something that works, son." Not just once, but every time. I'd built something at Redline. Not just production quotas, but a culture. A crew that trusted each other. Machinery that hummed like a heartbeat. And now they wanted me to hand it off to a guy who didn't know the difference between a hydraulic seal and a bearing collar. When I got home, I poured a bourbon, sat on the porch, and watched the West Texas sky fade to purple. I wasn't angry, not yet, but something in me settled that night. A quiet realization they didn't fire me because I failed. They let me go because they thought they could replace the man, but keep the system. What they didn't understand was that I was the system. And if they wanted to rip it apart, they'd better be ready for what happens when it breaks. Corey Sanders showed up on Monday morning wearing polished loafers and a pressed white shirt, like he was ready for a boardroom, not a factory floor. He had a tablet in his hand and that nervous energy of someone eager to prove himself in the wrong arena. I met him at the security gate, handed him a pair of steel-toe boots and safety goggles. "You'll need these more than that thing," I said, nodding toward his tablet. He smiled, clearly not catching the undertone. "Thanks, Mr. Cole. Big fan of what you've done here. I've read through your floor reports. Very thorough." I didn't answer, just led him through the plant. For the next few days, I gave him everything. Maintenance routines, safety checklists, the logic behind machine diagnostics, and why the number 4 press always needed 10 minutes to warm up before running at full torque. He nodded, took notes, asked questions. But I could see it already. He was logging processes, not people, facts, not wisdom. He didn't ask why Alicia kept a sugar packet in her locker. She's diabetic. Didn't notice Diego's limp or how the cold weather worsened it. And he sure didn't know the press line crew had their own silent way of signaling mechanical issues. Finger taps on the rail that told you more than any data graph could. By the end of the week, he was already talking about efficiency opportunities. "I think we can consolidate shifts in Zone B," he told me on Thursday. "Your redundancy system for the valve cutters, it's solid, but honestly, I think we can optimize that too. Save labor and time." I stared at him for a long beat. That redundancy saved a guy's hand in 2016. The cutter stalled mid-sweep, and the auto-reverse kicked in before it could trap his glove. He blinked. "Right, of course. Just thinking long-term." "Think short-term too," I said. "Like next Monday, short-term. That's when the next load of alloy arrives. And you'll see what happens when a cutter jams mid-run." He didn't reply. Friday morning, I overheard Corey in the break room talking with Trent. "Kenny's protocols are thorough, sure," he said. "But they're old school. We've got real-time analytics now. Once I streamline the inspection routines, we can probably drop 2 headcount from maintenance." I stepped away before they noticed me. No anger, just a cold, sinking feeling in my gut. They were cutting away muscle and calling it fat, and they didn't even know the difference. That night, I called Diego. "Listen," I told him, "I'm handing Corey the keys, but not the manual." Diego was quiet. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm giving him what's on paper. The rest, We keep that between us. The real procedures, the ones that actually keep people safe. You think it's going to get bad? I looked out across the dark field behind my house. Not yet, but soon. And when it did, I planned to be ready. My last Monday on the job started with a surprise. Corey had rearranged my desk, moved the photos of my son, replaced my chair with one of those ergonomic ones that look like a spaceship seat. I didn't say a word, just took the old chair back from the storage room and wheeled it into place like it had never left. At 11 a.m., HR held a farewell gathering in the break room. Cupcakes from a grocery store, lukewarm coffee, and a few half-hearted claps from people who were told to be there. Patricia handed me a card signed by people I hadn't worked with in years. Corey stood by the coffee machine, talking about honoring a legacy of excellence. I left before the speeches ended. Back in my office, though it wasn't mine anymore, I gathered my things. The dented lunchbox, the notebook with handwritten diagnostics no one else could interpret, the flash drive labeled hydraulic log 2010-2023. No one asked what it was. No one knew how much of that drive kept this place upright during blackouts, storms, and one fire scare back in 16. By 3 p.m., I was walking across the parking lot for the last time. That night, I didn't drink, didn't go out. I opened my notebook and started reviewing what I'd already seen coming. 6 weeks earlier, Leonard had started ignoring the maintenance crew's work orders. Oil changes delayed, safety sensors left unfixed. A pressure monitor skipped because it wasn't redlined yet. Every small delay stacked like dominoes. One push, and someone could get hurt. I created a new spreadsheet, my own, a private record of everything the new management was choosing to overlook. Diego fed me updates. Alicia sent photos of damaged gear with timestamps. Russell quietly forwarded shift reports with altered figures. This wasn't paranoia, it was prevention. Week 2 after my exit, I got a message from Alicia. New coolant system skipped maintenance again. They're blaming the supplier. 2 days later, a sensor on line 4 misread the pressure level and shut down the line for 90 minutes. Week 3, Diego called. Corey wants to extend the lubrication cycle on the piston pumps. Says the analytics support it. I asked, did he check the seal wear? Nope, says it's within parameters. He doesn't know those parameters came from experience, not manuals. Week 4, Russell texted a photo of a jammed valve. Maintenance was told to wait until the next quarterly review. We fixed it ourselves before a blowout. By now I wasn't angry, I was watchful. They'd gutted the system and called it streamlining. But you can't streamline trust. You can't automate gut instinct. The factory was still running, sure, but I could feel it. The weight shifting, the clock ticking. Then, week 5 brought the call I'd been expecting. 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Diego's name. I picked up on the first ring. Kenny, he said, his voice tight. The press jammed again. Corey blamed operator error, but this time, Sam's nephew got hurt. I sat upright. How bad? 2 fingers gone. Kid's 9. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath. This was it. The moment I'd feared. They're saying he bypassed the safety guard, Diego added. But I saw it. That guard's been flagged for weeks, never replaced. I'm calling someone, I said quietly. But not HR. No more warnings, no more polite emails. It was time to bring in someone who could shut them down, for real. By sunrise, I was sitting in my truck outside the Tulsa division of the Oklahoma Department of Labor. I hadn't been there in over a decade, not since we invited them in for a voluntary audit back in 2013. That time, it had been about pride. This time, it was necessity. I walked into the lobby with a manila folder under my arm and the weight of a 19-year-old kid's blood on my shoulders, not literally, but close enough. The receptionist directed me to Helen Barnes, a safety inspector I remembered from years back. She'd been new then, fresh-faced, cautious with her words. Now she looked like someone who'd seen 1,000 versions of this same story. We sat in a quiet corner office while I laid out the folder. Maintenance records, photos of faulty equipment, timestamps, texts from Diego, incident reports, logs showing changes to inspection protocols. Some faked, some ignored, all damning. Helen flipped through the paper slowly. This is serious, she said, eyebrows knitting. Kid lost 2 fingers, I said, voice low but steady. And they're already calling it operator error. But I can show you the guard was on back order for 6 weeks. Jason requested it twice, got denied both times. She looked up. You sure about that? I slid over my phone with a photo of the email. He forwarded this to me. Helen nodded once, took a note and said, we'll move fast. Unannounced inspection within 7 business days. Can I trust that it won't get swept under the rug? I'm not the one you need to worry about, she replied. But no, it won't. Not this time. I left the office feeling the way you do after reporting a fire. Relieved someone's coming, but terrified of what they'll find once they kick down the door. Over the next week, I kept my ear to the ground. Diego and Alicia said management was scrambling. Extra cleaning crews. Equipment getting patched up in a hurry. Jason was pulling doubles, his usual bravado stripped away. Then Russell dropped the bomb. He showed up at my house with a flash drive and a six-pack. We sat in my garage, the space half workshop, half sanctuary. I plugged the drive into my laptop. What is all this? I asked. Real records, he said. Not the ones they cooked up for the safety board. And emails between Leonard, Corey, and someone from corporate. I clicked open one. From C. Webster. To L. Wright P. Granger. Subject. Cost offsets. Maintenance plan. Q3. As discussed, delaying non-essential safety upgrades allows for $42K in savings this quarter. Should balance out the increased insurance premiums projected for 2024. I read it twice, then leaned back in my chair. They're budgeting around accidents, I said, literally factoring injury risk into savings. Russell nodded grimly. They're playing with lives like it's monopoly money. I copied everything, every email, every fake maintenance log, every red-flagged repair order with denial stamps. Then I called Helen again. This isn't just negligence, I told her. It's systemic. It's strategy. She asked me to bring it in personally. The next day I did. And as I placed the new file on her desk, I said what I'd been holding in for weeks. This isn't just about one kid. It's about a company that's decided safety is optional. Helen looked up. Her eyes had that same fire I remembered from a decade ago, only now it burned hotter. I'll make sure they feel this, she said. And from that moment, I knew Western Plains wasn't just going to get a slap on the wrist this time. They were about to be scorched. 3 days after I handed over the second batch of evidence to Helen, Helen, things began to shift. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like hairline fractures spreading across a pane of glass. I got a call from George Lawson at Meridian Energy Solutions, one of Western Plains' top clients. We'd worked together before, back when Meridian still did in-house inspections. He trusted my eye. Kenny, he said, not even bothering with pleasantries. Why am I seeing pressure valves stamped with your old QA code failing our incoming inspection? My chest tightened. When were they shipped? Last month, George replied. I thought you were gone. I am, I said. But apparently my signature still carries weight. He exhaled hard. Can we meet? We did. A day later, in a booth at a diner 30 miles from the plant, I brought printed photos, internal emails, and part reports. George brought an expression that shifted from surprise to fury as he flipped through them. This is bigger than negligence, he muttered. It's fraud. And it's happening under the nose of a company that used to take pride in its product, I said. He set down the folder and looked me straight in the eye. We'll handle it on our end, quietly, for now. But I promise you, this isn't getting buried. The next morning, Western Plains Line 1 hydraulic press failed. Catastrophically. Jason called me, voice shaking. Main press just blew a seal, oil everywhere, machines down. Anyone hurt? No, he said, but it shut the entire line down. I waited, let the silence do the work. I can't fix this, he admitted. Leonard's throwing out orders and no one knows what the hell they're doing. That was when I knew the facade was breaking. Meanwhile, back channels were heating up. Alicia texted me photos of a hastily arranged boardroom meeting. Leonard, red-faced, pacing like a cornered animal. Russell reported that inspection signage had been pulled from the walls. Diego heard whispers of legal being flown in from Axiom headquarters. And then the letter arrived, certified, official letterhead, from Western Plains legal team. They were offering me a consulting role. Temporary, discreet, high hourly rate, no public acknowledgement. Just help them fix the mess, quietly. I read it 3 times, then slid it across the table to Bill, my lawyer. They're scared, he said, smiling. But they're not desperate enough yet. Not yet, I echoed. We drafted a reply. Polite, firm, acknowledged the offer, declined for now, suggested they might consider a full audit of their safety practices before regulators suggested it for them. By week's end, I heard from Helen again. Kenny, she said, your timing couldn't have been better. Why's that? Because your report wasn't the only one we received. Someone inside started talking. Sent us internal memos, equipment logs. They signed it concerned manager. Ring any bells? I smiled. Jason was in. The cracks were now full-on fractures. And Western Plains was about to feel the collapse. It started with a whistle. High-pitched, shrill. and unmistakably mechanical. Jason heard it first. A warning hiss from the hydraulic press on line 3, the same machine I'd flagged in my maintenance report 6 months before they let me go. By the time the crew realized something was wrong, a cloud of vaporized coolant had filled the air. No one was seriously injured, but the noise alone sent operators scrambling and halted production for the third time in 10 days. Jason called me an hour later. "I filed the maintenance request last week," he said, frustration lacing his voice. Leonard denied it again, said the part could wait until Q4. "What did you do?" "I went above him," Jason replied. "Sent the full request chain directly to Axiom's legal compliance team." I leaned back in my chair, quietly impressed. "Ballsy," I said. "I'm not doing this to impress you," he replied. "I'm doing this because I can't keep looking these people in the eye while watching them risk their lives to meet a quota." The dam had cracked. 2 days later, Helen Barnes from the safety board returned, this time with 3 inspectors, clipboards in hand, cameras clicking as they walked every inch of the floor. Employees whispered. Supervisors stood stiff-backed near their stations. Leonard paced the mezzanine like a man clinging to the edge of a cliff. Alicia texted me. "They're rattled, big time." That same afternoon, George from Meridian Energy made his move. He sent an official letter to Western Plains suspending all pending orders until a full third-party quality audit could verify the integrity of their equipment. No signature, no spin, just a clean corporate slap to the face. It worked. At 6:12 p.m., my phone rang. "Mr. Harmon," said a composed voice. "This is Thomas Whitfield, Executive Director at Axiom Partners." I paused, letting the name register. The same man who'd signed off on cutting my department's training budget 2 years earlier. "I'd like to meet," he said. We sat down the next morning in a quiet conference room off-site. No Leonard, no Jason. Just me, Thomas, and a manila folder he slid across the table. "Mr. Harmon," he said, "we reviewed your reports, your timeline, and your documentation. You were right, and we failed to listen." I didn't say anything, just opened the folder and started reading. "We're making changes," Thomas continued. "Real ones. But we want you involved." I raised an eyebrow. "You're asking me to come back?" "No, I'm asking you to help us build something better." I closed the folder, then nodded once. On my terms. I didn't walk back into Western Plains as an employee. I walked in as a consultant, 3 days a week, no direct chain of command, no HR oversight, and no loyalty expected beyond the contract we signed. I liked it that way. I wasn't there for titles. I was there to make sure no one else ended up hurt because a spreadsheet said safety was too expensive. First thing I did was reassemble my core team. Diego came back part-time, training junior mechanics on how to read a machine's language. The clicks, the hums, the things no sensor could detect. Alicia was promoted to shift supervisor. Finally, it only took a complete operational collapse for them to see what she was worth. And Russell? I gave him oversight of the new inspection protocols. No more paper logs that disappeared overnight. Everything now ran on a custom system, time-stamped, locked, and reviewed weekly by both plant management and the safety board. Jason stayed on, though in a quieter role. He'd taken a few knocks but earned his stripes. He worked under the new operations director, Thomas Whitfield, who, true to his word, didn't flinch when I submitted the first round of system overhauls. Some were expensive. All were necessary. And this time, no one questioned that. Within 6 weeks, production stabilized. Quality improved. Meridian Energy resumed their orders. The safety board sent a follow-up letter, commendation for swift corrective action and best practice implementation. A month later, I got word that 3 other Axiom-owned facilities were adopting our updated safety protocols. I'd never imagined I'd become the model, but there it was, in writing. One Friday afternoon, Thomas approached me while I was reviewing parts inventory on the floor. "Thinking about offering you something more permanent," he said. I shook my head before he could finish. "I'm not looking to stay," I told him. "I came back to fix what was broken, not to put on a tie again." He nodded, unsurprised. "You sure?" "Absolutely," I said, smiling. "But if you want me around for quarterly reviews or system audits, I'll keep the calendar open." We shook hands. That was enough. That night, I stood by the perimeter fence and watched the plant glow in the distance. Machines humming, forklifts weaving through the aisles, workers laughing during shift change. It was running again. Not like before. Better. Not perfect, but getting there. And as the sun dipped behind the line of trucks heading out with fresh shipments, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to believe for a long time. I'd made a difference. Not with noise, not with rebellion, but with patience, proof, and the stubborn refusal to walk away when the people I cared about were left behind. It had been 8 months since the press failed, 8 months since I stepped back onto the factory floor. Sure, not as an employee, but as the guy they had to call to fix what they broke. Since then, Western Plains had undergone changes no one in corporate could have anticipated. The new operations director, Thomas Whitfield, wasn't just a figurehead. He showed up early, listened more than he talked, and most importantly, he let me rebuild what I'd spent 22 years creating. My consulting role turned into 3 structured days a week, just like I asked. I walked the floor, I retrained their supervisors. I rebuilt the inspection schedules, the checklists, the diagnostics. I gave the new maintenance team the tools they didn't even know they needed. But this time I didn't do it alone. Diego was promoted to senior maintenance lead, finally recognized for the expertise he carried in his gut. Alicia started mentoring junior techs, teaching them not just what to do, but why it mattered. Russell, who once feared losing his job for doing the right thing, now helped lead the internal safety committee, reporting directly to the board. Even Jason stayed on, now humbler and more collaborative. We didn't become friends, but we understood each other. He learned what they never taught in business school, that spreadsheets don't bleed, but people do. One afternoon in early spring, Thomas pulled me aside. "Kenny," he said, "you ever think about coming back full-time? Head of operations, full authority." I shook my head. Not for me. What I've built, others can now carry. And that's when it hit me. Legacy isn't about being irreplaceable. It's about building something that lasts when you're no longer around to watch it. That night, I drove past the same river I used to follow home. The refinery stood quiet, shadows of what they used to be. But my factory, Western Plains, it was alive, stronger, wiser, because a group of people had refused to let shortcuts become the standard. There are lessons I learned through this fire. 1, if you build something with care, fight to protect it. Whether it's a machine or a culture, not everything is worth letting go. 2, loyalty is earned, not assumed. Companies ask for it, but not all of them deserve it. Know the difference. 3, speak up, even when it's easier to stay silent, especially when safety is on the line. Quiet voices can still carry weight. 4, don't burn bridges, but don't let them walk over you either. Stand your ground with respect. Let your work speak for itself. 5, you are not your title. You're the impact you leave behind, and no spreadsheet can calculate that. Ethan came home for a visit recently. He's doing field work in Colorado now, engineering safety systems for construction crews. At dinner, he said, "Dad, your name comes up at school sometimes. Case study stuff, the guy who pushed back the right way." I didn't say much, just nodded, smiling behind my glass of tea. I didn't get a golden watch. I didn't get a standing ovation. What I got was a second chance to do it right, on my terms. The plant runs better now, not perfect, but honest, grounded, human. And me, I spend weekends fishing, mornings at the diner with Frank, afternoons restoring an old truck that hasn't run since '97. Peace doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives with quiet satisfaction, knowing you protected what mattered. I didn't win by fighting fire with fire. I won by refusing to be erased. And in the end, that was more than enough.